ॐ दक्षिणास्य समारम्भा शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमा अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ता स्मर्या गुरुपरम्परा श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। परिज्ञानाश्रम श्रीगुरुशङ्कर परिज्ञानाश्रम शङ्कर सद्गुरु केशव वामन कृष्ण पाण्डुरङ्ग आनन्द परिज्ञान गुरु सद्यो जात शङ्कर सद्गुरु गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुराः सुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। We completed the 7th chapter in the last session, in which the last two verses were the Prashna Bija shlokas for the next chapter. And I quite in detail discussed about what were actually the words that Lord Krishna introduced in the last two verses of the chapter 7. And Lord Krishna introduces these words: Brahma, Adhyatmam, Adhibhutam, Adhidaivam, Adhiyajnam, and also Karma, and finally remembering the Lord, remembrance Prayanakale, at the time of death. These were the 7 things that Lord Krishna mentioned. And then naturally Arjuna wants to know what really these things mean. Now, in the 8th chapter, as I said, this 8th chapter is a little different, when we take it in continuation with the 7th and also for the 9th chapter to come. Now in the 7th chapter, the Paraprakriti, Aparaprakriti was talked about. And from the 9th chapter, there'll be more emphasis on Upasana and on Paraprakriti. Now, what the 8th chapter does is, it's almost like a bridge where this is the only place where Lord Krishna can discuss more in detail about the Upasana, Saguna Ishvara Upasana. That is Upasana or worship of Ishvara with a particular name and form as Ishtadevata, as with a particular attribute as a particular Devata. And what happens actually to these Saguna Upasakas. So what is the content of this chapter, of the 8th chapter? The first thing is to give the Shastra Paribhasha. I told you last time what is Paribhasha. There are certain terms, certain words which are used very loosely by us without knowing really what the exact meaning of these words are. And these particular words which we are using now, like Brahma, then Adhyatmam, Adhidaivam, Adhibhutam, from the point of view of Shastra, from the context of Shastra, What is the meaning of these words? What is the correct meaning of these words? What is the Shastra Paribhasha? That is what is going to be explained in very brief by Lord Krishna, in the third and fourth verses. And then from the fifth verse onwards, till the end of this chapter, Krishna is going to talk about certain new aspects which are talked about in the Shastra as to what is a Saguna Ishvara Upasaka like. What are the gatis, or what is it that happens to a Saguna Ishvara Upasaka at the time of death? How to remember Ishvara at the time of death? And then what are the different paths that are followed by these Saguna Upasakas? So the entire chapter is going to talk about the Saguna Upasaka and also the Gati, or what is the path taken or the trajectory taken by the Saguna Ishvara Upasakas after death. And that is what is going to be the main topic in this 8th chapter, in which here again Omkara is brought about as one of the Upasana symbols, or one of the pratikas of Upasana as Omkara, as he won't be able to bring it again anywhere else. So Krishna wants to actually use this chapter to describe many things which probably Lord Krishna will not get an opportunity to talk about in the further or future chapters. And so, as the Prashna Bija shlokas which we saw last time, naturally, since Arjuna has heard of these words, but he does not know the real contextual meaning of what these words mean. Therefore, he wants to know what is the Shastra Paribhasha of all these words. And therefore, the first two verses are in the form of Arjuna's questions, where Arjuna is asking Krishna as to what is the real meaning of all these words that you have talked about. Certain words, oh Krishna, I've heard, you have mentioned them earlier, but as Arjuna was also a Kshatriya who was also following, certain upasanas and other things, he must have heard about all these words such as Adidaivam, Adibhutam, etc. And he wants to know the real meaning. What is the paribhasha of these words? So the first two questions, first two verses, we can read together, which form the full question of Arjuna. So, Kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adhibhutancha kim proktam adhidaivam kim uchyate adhiyajna katham kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katham nyeyosi niyatatmabhihi. So all the 5 or 6 terms Lord Krishna has used, now Arjuna is going to ask them in the form of these two questions. Now, the first question he asks is, Kim tad brahma he purushottama? He purushottama, the last word in the second line, purushottama, that is sambodhana to Lord Krishna. He purushottama, purushanam uttamaha, he purushottama, kim tad brahma? What is that Brahman? Tad Brahma. That means Arjuna has heard of this word called Brahma. So that word which I've heard earlier from you and from elsewhere called Brahma, what is it, He Purushottama? Kim Tad Brahma? What is that Brahman which I've heard about? Because Brahma has so many meanings, which, as I explained in the last class, in Sanskrit language, each verse, each word can have many, many meanings. And the meaning depends on the context as to what is the meaning that has been used for this word. And in Shastra Paribhasha, what is it that you're trying to talk about when you say Brahma? Kim Tad Brahma? What are the other meanings of Brahma? In the last session itself, I have explained in detail. So, Kim Tad Brahma, He Purushottama, what is that Brahma which you have been mentioning? Kim Adhyatmam? You mentioned about something called as Adhyatmam. No, you said Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiye Te Brahma Tad Viduhu Kritsnam Adhyatmam Karma Cha Akilam, in the 29th verse of the last chapter. Hey Lord, you said Adhyatmam. What is that? Kim Adhyatmam? Kim Karma? What is the real meaning of karma? For me, karma means it could be action. But what is the real meaning of karma from the point of view of Shastra? What is the Shastra paribhasha of karma? You said karma cha akhilam. What is this karma? Adibhuta chakim, adibhutan chakim. What is this adibhutam? You said adibhutam in the next verse. Sadibhutam. Adibhutam saha, you said. And then you said, adhidaivam. So what is this adibhutam chakim proktam? You talked about adibhutam. What is it? Adhidaivam kimuchyate. What is the meaning of adhidaivam, which also you talked about? Then adhiyajnam katham. What is this adhiyajnam you talked about? Ko atra dehe asmin he Madhusudana. Where does this adhiyajna reside in the body? Ko atra adhiyajna katham kaha atra dehe asmin. Who is this adhiyajna in this body, he Madhusudana? And you also told me prayana kalecha katham nyeyosi niyatatmavihi. You said that those who know me as Brahma, as Adhyatmam, as Adibhutam, as Adidaivam, as Karma, as Adhiyajna. Actually, in summary, those who know me as everything that is there, such a person, if he understands this, he understands me, Ishvara, as this, even at the time of death, prayana kale, okay, at the time of death also. How is this person supposed to know you at the time of death? How can a person know you like this at the time of death? You told me even at the time of death. How is it possible? Niyatatma bihi. Niyatatma means the one who has been making an effort to know you. How does he know you? How does he communicate, or how does he align himself with you? How does he connect himself with you at the time of death? Now, in the next two verses, that is the third and fourth verse, Lord Krishna very, very briefly gives only the paribhasha, the meaning of all these words. And he does not explain them very much, but he gives them a very, very brief explanation of all these words, and which I have also given in the last session quite in detail. Now, Krishna says, Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavodhyatmamuchyate Bhutabhavodbhavakaraha Visargah Karma Sangitaha. So, three questions are being answered here. One is what? Brahma. What is this Brahma? Brahma, as I said, can mean, Brahma can stand for a Brahmana, Brahma can stand for Vedas, Brahma can stand for this Brahman, Brahma can stand for even Brahmaji, the Chaturmukha Brahma, who's actually the creator of this entire universe. So here, none of other three are not that. Hey Arjuna, what is the meaning of Brahma? Brahman or Brahma means Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Aksharam, that which is imperishable, that which is available in all the three periods of time. Naksharati iti aksharam, that which does not perish, imperishable, that which is there, which is present in all the three periods of time, that which is not limited by space, time, or any other object. That is why it is called as Paramam. Everything else in the Jagat is limited. Limited means what? Limited by space, limited by time, and limited by an object. Now let us take me this body, mind, sense complex. I am limited by space, right? I am here. I cannot be somewhere else. So I am limited by space. I am limited by time. I was not there before I was born. This body is there now at this time. After the death, this body is not going to be there. So when I say I, this body, mind, this jiva is limited by time. This jiva is also limited by another object, correct? Now this, laptop is sitting in front of me. If it is limiting me, there are two things. I am limited by everything else around me. So desha, kala, vastu, parichinna, everything is limited. Parichinna means limited. Everything that is there in the manifest universe is limited by space, time, and object. Desha Kala Vastu Parichina. Whereas Brahman or Brahma is that which is one and only Paramam, that which is the highest Paramarthika Satyam, that which is not limited by time, space, and object. So it is limitless, infinite, imperishable consciousness, which is called as Brahma, Aksharam-brahma, which we already saw what it was. It was called as Atma. In the second chapter, it was talked about in the 12th to 25th verse. Naksharati. There is no kshara. There is no vyaya. That's why it is called avyayam. Aksharam. Na vyeti iti avyayam. Naksharati iti avyayam. That which is imperishable, that which is infinite, that which is not limited by time, space, or any other object. Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Paramam means that is the highest, the Paramarthika Satyam. Nothing is there which can overcome that or go beyond that. Then Swabhavaha Adhyatma Uchyate. What is the meaning of Swabhava? This Aksharam Brahman, this consciousness, with reference to an individual body, mind, sense complex, centered on this body, mind, sense complex, Jivam Adhikritya, Deham Adhikritya, that which is centered on this body, mind, sense complex, that same Aksharam Brahma is called as Adhyatmam. That consciousness Brahman, which is available as the innermost, Pratyagatma, that consciousness, that Sakshi Chaitanya Atma, with the reference to this body, mind, sense complex in every jiva is called as Adhyatmam. Adhi-atmam, Deham, Jivam, Adhikritya, Adhyatmam, centered on this jiva. And here a word is used, Swabhavaha. What is the meaning of Swabhavaha? This consciousness all the time which is pulsating in me as aham, aham, aham iti. Isn't it? All of us have that spuranam. Aham, I am, aham asmi iti, constantly that I-ness and the amness is constantly available to me. So that constantly available awareness, that constantly available amness, easiness, which is my swabhava, which is there naturally in me. I don't have to prove it by anything else. That I am is naturally there in me every minute of my waking hours. This is what is called as the Swabhavaha. This Aksharam Brahma, with reference to this body, mind, sense complex, which is naturally available to me as I, this consciousness, is called as Adhyatmam. As we are going further, we will understand this. This is also has been very much in detail described in Tattva Bodha and Atma Bodha. Then, next one. What is karma? भूत भाव उद्भवकरः विसर्गः कर्म संज्ञितः. Karma संज्ञितः means the name called karma indicates संज्ञितः. What? भूत भाव उद्भवकरः. That means karma is that which is responsible for the creation of the new bodies, embodiment of the new bodies, for the creation of jivas. The jivas who are born again and again and again in a new body. Such, what is it that makes every jiva come back again and again and again? Jiva Bhuta Bhava Udbhavakaraha. Bhuta Bhava, the one where the bhutas or the jivas are manifest. The cause for this manifestation of all the jivas is called as karma. We all already seen that. When a jiva does a karma, karma phala gets accrued. The sanchita karma is there, which a part of the sanchita karma comes, fructifies in a particular lifetime, which makes a jiva to embody itself in another body. Therefore, karma is what makes a jiva come back again and again and again into a particular bhava called as a particular body. Bhuta bhava udbhavaha karma. Now he uses a term here called as visargaha. What is the meaning of visargaha? Visargaha means visarjanam. Visarjanam means giving out, sacrificing, bringing out is what is called as visarjanam. A karma can also be called as visarga or visarjanam. Why is it? When I do a kaika karma or a vachika karma or manasa karma, what am I doing? I am giving out something in the form of action, in the form of a bodily action or a action, of the vakindriya, or as the, action by thought. What am I doing? I am giving out, I am discharging something, giving out something to the jagat. This is what is called as visarjanam or visarga. So what is karma? Karma is nothing but giving out. From the context of a yajna, a particular yajna karma, when the yajna karma is done, ahutis are given, certain havis is given, oblations are given out. That is called as visargaha visarjanam. That which was belonging to me, that which was me, I give it out into the fire. Similarly, whenever I do any karma, it is a yajna. We have seen that in the 4th chapter. Breathing is yajna, eating is yajna, seeing is yajna. Every action that this body, mind, sense complex that is doing is yajna, in which I am discharging something, giving something out through my karma. Therefore, Krishna says, Bhuta bhava udbhava karaha visargaha karmaha. That is why we have a common phrase which we use in English, isn't it? He discharged his duties, correct? Hey, Arjuna, yuddha, yudhyasva, discharge your duty as a kshatriya. It's a commonly used term, discharge. That means what? When you do any karma, you're discharging your physical, mental, vak, energy for something, to attain something, to achieve something, whatever may be that action. Therefore, karma is that visarjanam, that giving out, which is responsible for the jivas to be born again and again in the cycle of birth and death. So, how many things did we finish? Aksharam-brahma, that is Brahma, we finished. Adhyatma, we finished. And karma, we finished. This you will have to probably listen to again and again and again, because these are the new paribhasha, shastra paribhasha, that is being used by Lord Krishna, which is going to be very useful when we are doing the studies of the other scriptures also, like Upanishads and other scriptures. These are the common terms that are used. Then in the 4th verse he says, adhibhutam ksharo bhavaha purushaschaधिदैवतम् अधियज्ञोऽहमेवात्र देहे देहभृतां vara. Dehabhratam vara is the sambodhana for Arjuna. Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Dehabhratam varaha. He Shreshtaha, you are the Shreshta. Dehabhratam means among the jivas. Dehabhrataha means a jiva. Dehabhratam varaha means among all the jivas. He Shreshta, you are the Shreshta. Therefore, He Arjuna, the one who's a Shreshta or exalted among all the jivas, an exalted jiva, may you understand that Adhibhutam Ksharo Bhavaha, that Jagat which you are seeing around you, which is constantly changing. Ksharati iti Ksharaha. Adhibhutam, that which is, centered on the Jagat. Okay, Jagat. Adhikritya. That Jagat means what? That which you're seeing as the Jagat outside, as names and form outside. This entire Jagat which comes into existence, which exists for some time and degenerates and goes away. All the bhava vikaras are there for which? That is what? asti, jayate, vardhate, viparinamate, apakshiyate, vinashyati. Again, Tattvabodha, care of Tattvabodha. What are the bhava vikaras? Anything which comes, which is born, which goes through all these vikaras and ultimately disappears. And therefore, the entire jagat of names and forms that we see, the entire apara prakriti that we see, the apara prakriti of Ishvara, which is nothing but the manifestation of the entire universe, is Ksharaha. That which keeps on, changing bhava vikaras, and ultimately it disappears. So, this jagat, which includes this body, mind, sense complex also, which constantly goes on undergoing changes and one day finally disappears. This is called as Adhibhutam, that which is centered around the Kshara Rupi Jagat. So Adhibhutam Ksharo Bhavaha. Bhavaha means Bhavati. Adhibhutam Ksharaha Bhavati. That which is constantly changing is called as Adhibhutam, which we can take it as Jagat. Okay? Jiva, that consciousness which is manifesting in this body, mind, sense complex is Adhyatma, that which is manifesting as the manifest jagat of apara prakriti is called as adhibhutam. Next he says purushascha adhidaivatam. Purusha is called as adhidaivatam or adhidaivam. What is the meaning of purusha? That consciousness which purusham, that consciousness which is manifest in me, that adhyatmam, which is actually functioning as a functionary to make this jiva function, all the organs of the jivas functioning in unison like an orchestra. This whole body, mind, sense complex is functioning only because of the functionary devatas, which are called as adhidevatas. Similarly, in the Jagat outside also, in the Kshara Adhibhutam also, there are these functionary devatas, because of which the laws of the Jagat, all the cosmic laws and all the various millions of kinds of laws are functioning because of the various Adhidevatas. And I also told you in the last session, what is an Adhidevata? And I gave the example of the Adhidevatas, how many of them are involved in making me actually produce one word from the kantha. Here how many devatas are involved. So it is the devatas or the functionaries who are nothing but the manifestations of Ishvara, who make the adhyatma function. Adhyatma means what? This body, mind, sense complex function in a proper way, in a coordinated manner, and also make the entire Kshara Prapancha function according to the fixed laws of nature or cosmic laws. This is called as Adhidaivam. So there is an Adhidevata for every part of our body. There is an Adhidevata for every law that is there in the Kshara Prapancha. And how many Adhidevatas are there for the Sukshma Shariram? Again, you have to go back to the Tattvabodha where you see what are the Adhidevatas. That means such an Adhidevatas, all these Adhidevatas put together is called as Purusham. Purushaha also refers to Hiranyagarbha. See, these terms you may feel very confused now, but you have to keep on referring to Tattvabodha. What is Hiranyagarbha? Hiranyagarbha is Samashti Adhidaivam. That means in my body, whatever in this jiva, whatever Adhi Daivas or Adhi Devatas are there, whatever number of Adi Devatas are there in the Akshara Prapancha, the totality of these Adi Devatas, which is called as Adi Devam, is called as Hiranya Garbha or Samashti Sukshma Sharira. Samashti Sukshma Prapancha, it is called as. So, Adi Devam is called as Purusha. Why is it called as Purusha? The same Adi Devata, which is responsible for sight in me, is the same Adhidevata which is responsible for the faculty of sight in every jiva. In all the jivas, it is the same, Surya Bhagavan. Okay, mind, Chandra Devata is the Adhidevata for the mind in all the jivas. Like that, in every jiva, every Adhidevata has the same function which makes all the jivas function in a unison. Therefore, the Adhidevatas together, all together, are called as the Purusha. And that Purusha manifests in every jiva as the Adhidevata for sight, Adhidevata for hearing, Adhidevata for every part of the body. I gave you the example of what? Of the Kavacham, Devi Kavacham, Shiva Kavacham. We have read this. How many devatas are invoked to protect this? Similarly, so many devatas are there which are functionaries for every physical law, for every cosmic law, for every chemical law, for every law in the Jagat outside. And therefore, this whole Adhidaivam put together is called as Purusha or Hiranyagarbha. This is Adhidaivam. So Adhyatmam is what? That consciousness, Brahman, with reference to individual jiva, which is the Sakshi Chaitanya behind every body mind sense complex, is called as Adhyatmam. That consciousness which sustains the entire Apara Prakriti in the Jagat is what is called as the Adhibhutam. That consciousness which sustains and makes the individual Adhyatmam and Adhibhutam function in unison as one, as one, one whole, is called as Adhidaivam. And that consciousness is I. Krishna is telling, he's going to say that further also. And it is that consciousness which is behind every karma that is being done. It is that consciousness which is the recipient of all the, the phalams of all the karmas, which he's going to say in the next verse, So next, in the next line, so what he says is in the last line, last two lines of the verse 4, he says, Adhiyagnoham ahameva atra. Adhiyagnaha ahameva atra. There, here, Adhiyagnaha also I am. What is this Adhiyagnaha here? I am that consciousness behind the ahankara which acts. I am the one who creates the karma. I am the presiding deity of all the karmas. I am the presiding deity of all the karma phalas. I am the presiding deity of as in the distributor, karma phala data of all the karmas. And these karmas can be called as yajna. Therefore, I am existing in the form of adhiyajnam. Adhiyajnam means the creator or the one who creates, presides over all the karmas of the individual jivas, and the one who receives all the karma phalas of the karmas. I am the receiver of the karmas of all the bhutas. I am the receiver or the bhokta of the karma phalas of all the jivas. And also I am the distributor or the karma phala data of all the jivas. Therefore, I am called as the Adhiyagnaha. I make this body perform. That's why Bhagwan Shankaracharya says Adhiyagna is Deha Samavayi. What is Deha Samavayi? Not separate from this body. Therefore, Arjuna asked the question, where does this Adhiyagna? Ko atra dehe asmin Adhiyagna? In the second question he asked, Adhiyagna katham? What is this Adhiyagna? Ko atra dehe asmin? Where is this Adhiyagna in this body? Okay, so that consciousness which was called Adhyatmam, that consciousness which was, the sustainer of Adhibhutam, that consciousness which is the sustainer of Adhidaivam, I am the same Adhiyagnyam and I cannot be separated from a jiva's body, mind, sense complex. Therefore, I am the Deha Samavayi. Deha Adi Karana. Okay, Dehadi Karanaha Samavayi. That means I am the one who cannot be separated from the jivas, Deha, and also I am the Deha Adhikarana. The Deha is, I am the Adhikarana of all the Deha, parts of the body of every jiva, because of which all the karma is possible, because of which receiving of all the karma phala is possible. Therefore, I preside over all the karmas. Karmanaha nishpattihi. Karmanaha nishpattihi. Visarjanam, or the giving out of all the karmas, is my swarupam, because of my swarupam, my existence. Therefore, I am called as Antaryami. Adhiyagnya, I am also known as Antaryami. I am the one who's residing in every jiva. And last, that is in the fifth chapter, he says in the fifth verse, in the fifth verse, Lord Krishna, from the fifth verse now these all the other things are over now, the definitions of the paribhasha of all the words. Fifth verse till the 28th verse talk about Antakala, how is Lord or Ishvara to be remembered at the time of death. So we'll just read this verse. Then I'll have to give you a little bit of introduction as to what Lord Krishna is going to talk about in this entire 23 verses till the end. So in the fifth verse he says, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. So he says, Antakale, maranakale, at the time of this sharira viyoga kale. Actually speaking, the sharira does not die. What is the meaning of death? The sukshma sharira simply decides to leave the sthula sharira because the prarabdha karmas are over. Therefore, sthula sharira, sukshma sharira, viyoga is called as death. That's all. The body, the sthula sharira, which was anyway jada, remains as jada. The sukshma sharira chooses to leave the physical body. So, viyoga kale, sukshma sharira viyoga from the Sthula Sharira is called as Antakala or Maranakala. And what Krishna is saying, Mameva Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. Kalevaram means body. Muktva, the one, the jiva who leaves the physical body at the time of death. Mam Anusmara. Okay, Mam Smaran Muktva. Mam Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. Mam Smaran, thinking of me, keeping his mind concentrated upon me, doing Anusmaranam of me as he has known me. Mam Smaran Muktva, giving up, Sharira Viyoga Muktva, Kalevaram Muktva, Mameva Swaram, Antakalecha Yaha Prayati, the one who leaves this physical body, thinking of me. What happens to such a person? Saha, he, Madbhavam Yati. Okay, so he attains my bhavam. He knows me. He attains my swarupam. Because I'm already, mam here means what? I'm already the adhiyagnya. I'm already the adhyatma. The one who knows me, the one who thinks of me as nothing but that consciousness, that Ishvara, which is this adhiyagnyam, I, the adhiyagnyam, the adhyatmam, is thought of. The mind is, the thought is constantly of me. And at the time of death, with that thought, ultimately, this person reaches me. Nasti atra samshayaha mad bhavam yati. What is the meaning of mad bhavam? He understands my swarupa, and ultimately, what is his gati? What happens when a person or when an upasaka thinks of me? He is in my Anusmaranam at the time of death. what happens to such a person is going to be described in all the coming future verses. Now, one thing is very important for us to know, that if I have to remember something at the end of my life, I may say I'll think of anything all my life, and when I'm dying, I'll think of Bhagwan. Because ultimately, what is Bhagwan saying? If I think of Bhagwan at the time of death, I will reach Bhagwan. So, where is that reaching? I don't know. But I will reach Bhagwan. Therefore, it doesn't matter what I think of now. But at the time of death, I will think, is it possible? Number one, I don't know when I'm going to die. When death is going to knock at my doors, I do not know. That is one thing. Secondly, at the time of death, whatever I'm used to thinking all my life, that thought only will come, isn't it? Therefore, what Krishna is trying to say here is, if you want to think of me in the last moments of your life, it has to become a regular practice for you all your life, because whatever you have thought of all your life becomes a samskara for you, and then what you have been constantly thinking of, that keeps coming back again and again and again into your mind. Therefore, what you have been thinking of becomes the Anusmaranam. Our Swamiji always says Anusmaranam. If when you are doing all the time, this thought of me has to remain in the background, that is what is called as Anusmaranam. And if in the background of my mind, Ishvara or Lord is not there at all, how is Ishvara going to appear in the nth moment when I am about to die? Therefore, what it means is, Mam Yeva Smaran Muktva Kalevaram Na Atra Samshayaha Madbhavam Yati. There is no doubt. It is my promise. Ishvara is saying, Krishna as Ishvara is saying, it's my promise. You think of me. If your thought is centered on me when you're dying, you will know me, you will reach me. What is that reaching? We'll see later. But then, how can this happen unless I'm thinking of Ishvara all the time? What is the meaning of that thinking all the time? That means Ishvara is everything. Ishvara is Adhyatmam, Adibhutam, Adidhaivam. I am this consciousness is Paraprakriti of Ishvara is everything. And I am that Paraprakriti of Ishvara. This Anusmaranam should always be there. What is the meaning of Anusmaranam, which always our Swamiji insists? Let there be Anusmaranam, let there be Anusmaranam. When you're doing your japa and all, what you're doing is Smaranam. But let that Smaranam be there all the time, which is called as Anusmaranam. What is the meaning of Anusmaranam? That over which I have been meditating upon becomes available to me spontaneously in the background. All the time it is there in the background of my mind. Okay? And I'm aware of it. That constantly, that Ishvara prajna, Ishvara dhyanam, Ishvara jnanam, that smaranam is constantly, spontaneously available in the background of my mind. And it is that which is constantly running in the background, which is going to be available to me every time. And at the time of death, if this Anusmaranam has been there all my life, then only it is going to come up as Mam Eva Smaran Muktva Kalevaram. Kalevaram means body. Okay, so now let us take an example of what this Anusmaranam means. It is possible for us, to have the Anusmaranam of our Ishta Devata all the time, not only at the time of Japa. Let me give you one example of a musician. Okay, a musician has arranged or set up the Shruti. Okay, the Shruti has been set. Now, whatever acrobatics the musician may be doing, the Shruti is in the background constantly. This person is so much logged on to this Shruti, whatever that Shruti is constantly there in the background. And on that, the musician doesn't have to keep on remembering that Shruti. The Shruti is continuously playing in the background, and the musician is able to do what is needed whenever it is needed. When he's not doing anything, when he's silent for a few seconds, It is the Shruti that is there. So this constant Anusmaranam of Shruti. What about the Laya of the Tala? When a musician is singing according to a particular theka or a particular Tala, he doesn't keep counting like this 1, 2, 3, 4. No. That theka, that Tala becomes like an Anusmaranam. In the background of the mind, the Shruti and the Laya is constantly there, constantly there. And it is available anytime, any moment, this musician can do what is necessary. Same thing with the dancer. Same thing with anybody who is teaching. If this knowledge has become an Anusmaranam, all the time this is there, then to remember it, to share it, it is very easy because it is there in the background. So what Krishna is saying here is, Mam smaran muktva kalevara mameva smaran. Not thinking of something else, thinking of what is happening in the shop, what is happening in the this one, what it seems. That's why it seems in our culture all the children are named after our gods and goddesses, so that at least it is expected that at least at the end maybe the person will call out for his children or his wife or something, and if the name is something Narayana, Vishnu or something like that, he'll call a Narayana. But then just calling out Narayana is not sufficient. That Anusmaranam has to be there. Therefore, what is said is that if I am aware of the fact that everything is Ishvara, then knowing this as an Anusmaranam, for this to become an Anusmaranam, for this to become a background flow all the time in me, I have to be at it entire life, and that is a practice. Therefore, mameva smaran kalevaram muktva yaha saha prayati madbhavam. So it is not possible to gate crash. You cannot gate crash into Ishvara by thinking, okay, I will think of you, a God, at the end of it. No. So Smaranam has to start, Upasana has to start, thinking about the Lord has to start. Okay. In the 9th chapter, Krishna is going to say that Manmana bhava, Mad bhakto bhava, Madhyaji bhava, Mameva Anusman. That's going to be told. So this has to be there all the time, because what Krishna says is this particular rule that whatever you think of in the last moment, at the moment of death, you are going to have that thought as the trajectory for your next life, for the next janma that you're going to take. So this rule that if you think of me, you will attain me, this rule is not only for me. He says, whatever you think of, you become that. Have you not heard of the story of Jada Bharata? The Jada Bharata, who was so fond of that one small deer that he had sort of brought up, and at the time of death, I believe, and he was a person who had left everything to do dhyanam, Brahma dhyanam, for Brahma jnanam. Ultimately, what happened at the time of death? The only thought was, what will happen to this deer when I die? That's what happens to most of us. Maybe people whom we leave behind will do much better without us. But then, what will happen? What will this person do? What will that person do? What will my business do? How will they take care? Nothing. They'll probably do much better. God has got plans for them. I'm not, necessary for them. But then Jada Bharata, it is said that because his last thought was that of the deer, he was born as deer again, and he knew that he could not, because all his life, though he was doing dhyanam, Brahma, on Brahman, Ishvara dhyanam, his background Anusmaranam was only of the deer, and he was born as deer. If it can happen to people like Jada Bharata, what about us? Therefore, he says in the next verse, he says, we'll take this next verse, and then I will start explaining to you what is it that Lord Krishna is wanting to talk about at Upasaka. Now, the last thought at the time of death is considered to be that which will really take me to where I'm born, in a vexed embodiment that I take. So he says in the next verse, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram Tam tamevaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitaha. So, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalevaram. Whatever you are thinking of, you know, at the time of leaving your body, tam tameva yeti kaunteya. In Mundakopanishad, we have one verse, kama, um, kamanya kamya manaha, okay, that which are desiring, that which are desiring at the time of death, kama bhir jayate tatra tatra. Okay, because of that desire, you are born in that particular situation where this desire can be fulfilled. Kama bhihi jayate. Okay, that kama bihi, because of that those kamas, jayate tatra tatra. Whatever you wanted there, in such places you get birth. So kamanya manya manaha kama bhir jayate tatra tatra, Mundakopanishad says. So if at all you are desiring for something, whatever is your last thought of your desire, whatever is the last thought that you are thinking of, that thought, tam tam yeva yeti he kamteya, that thought is responsible for what happens, what kind of an embodiment, what kind of a body you are going to be born with in your next life. And therefore, hey Kaunteya, this is not a rule only for Madbhavam, it is for every bhavam, that which you think of. Therefore, hey Kaunteya, hey Arjuna, instead of thinking of something else and being born somewhere else, may you think of me. If you have to think of me, what should happen? That bhavana that you have to think of me, that Ishvara, Aham Ishvara Asmi, Ishvara is everything. Ishvara is Adibhuta. Ishvara is whatever maybe that you want to. Ishvara is the Karta. Ishvara is the Bhokta. Ishvara is everything here, and I surrender to that Ishvara. This has to become my Anusmaranam Abhyasena. In the 6th chapter, what did Krishna say? Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena. Abhyasena means what? I have to constantly bring in this Ishvara Bhava, as Ishvara is everything. Aparashakti of Ishvara is the manifest name and form universe. Parashakti, or Parashakti of Ishvara, Paraprakriti of Ishvara is nothing but Brahma, Adhyatmam, Adhidaivam, Adhiyagnyam. Okay, everything that is there is nothing but this para prakriti of Ishvara, and there is nothing other than Ishvara, and I am that Ishvara. If this thought all the time is there, then when I die, there is no question of coming back again and again. Madbhavam yanti. That is a person who is dying with Ishvara Jiva Abheda. Now, it is possible that it may not be possible for most of us to have that Abheda Bhava. Jiva Ishvara Abheda Bhava may not be possible for all of us, either because we are not prepared for that, or because we are not able to understand the Jiva Ishvara Abheda. Then what Krishna is saying is, doesn't matter, remain a Saguna Brahma Upasaka all your life. Be a Saguna Ishvara Upasaka in the form of an Ishta Devata, in the form of whatever name and form you want to see me as. It may be as Rama, as Krishna, as Shiva, as Devi, as Ganapati, as Hanuman, whatever it is. There are so many devatas which are manifestations of me, Ishvara. Therefore, if you are not able to think of me, Ishvara, as that very Paraprakriti, that consciousness which is you, and get moksha, which is the topic of chapter 9, which is the topic of chapter from 13 to 18, it doesn't matter. Now I will tell you, Arjuna, if this Jiva Ishvara Abheda or Advaita Bhavam is not possible, doesn't matter. May you have the Abhyasa of connecting to me, aligning yourself to me with the name and form till the end, doesn't matter. Even when you die, You think of me with whichever name and form you have been used to connecting with me all your life. Therefore, if you want to think of me in any particular form also at the time of death, you have to constantly do smaranam on me with that particular name and form, with that particular bhavana all your life. What does it mean? You have to have a constant abhyasa. Constant abhyasa in the form of japa, constantly seeing everything as the manifestation of my Ishta Devata. Whatever is happening, this karma I am doing because of my Ishta Devata. I am offering this karma to Ishta Devata. Therefore, a karma yogi and upasaka, they are constantly having the abhyasa of Saguna Ishvara Upasana, which is the topic of this particular chapter till the end. Now, what happens when there is a constant abhyasa? A constant abhyasa becomes a vasana. Understand? Constantly, when we keep on thinking of our Ishta Devata, with abhyasa, what happens? That becomes a vasana. What is a vasana? That which is spontaneously available in me all the time as a background. Like a musician has the vasana of Shruti and Laya, as a dancer constantly has the vasana of Laya. Okay, similarly, when we have constantly done the smaranam of Ishvara in whichever form, Saguna Ishvara Upasana, we have done constantly, continuously, it becomes a vasana in me. And when it is a vasana, constantly it is available for me. Just make a small trial. When you're going to sleep, you just do your Ishta Devata japa when you're going to sleep. And don't think of anything else. When you fall asleep, thinking of or doing the japa, manasika japa of your Ishta Devata, just remember when the next morning when you get up, your mind will be repeating the japa with which you fell asleep. Same thing happens when a person sleeps and leaves this body and comes the next time in another body. So what is said is that Mam Anusmara. Smaranam, yes. Let the smaranam becomes an abhyasa in such a way that it becomes a spontaneous background anusmaranam which is available for you at the time of death and which prevents you from thinking of other thoughts. Therefore, when you're quiet, when you're silent, when your mind is not capable of thinking of anything else at the time of death, what comes up is your practice, your vasana. It is the vasana which manifests when obviously your mind is not capable of thinking anything. At the time of death, your mind cannot think of anything. You cannot speak anything. What appears, what the mind really will have is that vasana will manifest. And if anusmaranam, that is at that time also, your smaranam constantly has become the vasana, and that anusmaranam at the time of death, you are thinking of me as your Ishta Devata, as a Saguna Brahma or Ishvara Upasana. Mam eva madbhavam eva yati saha. Such a person will reach me. Reach me means what? That will be talked about. In what way? What is the gati for that? What happens to his sukshma sharira or the jiva? What happens to the traveling jiva? In Advaita bhava, there is no question of coming back because this person is already a jivan mukta. So he's not going to come back. Whereas a person who is not a jivan mukta and who is not capable of understanding jiva ishvara aikyam or advaita or bheda bhava, let you constantly be in my smaranam, and that will take you. And where will it take you? I will tell you, Arjuna, where this constant remembrance at the time of death, remembering me, where it will lead you. That's what I'm going to talk about in the from the 7th verse onwards. This is what Lord Krishna says. With this, we'll stop. ॐ नन्दन्तु साधका सर्वे विनश्यन्तु विदूषकाः अवस्थाशाम्भवी मेस्तु प्रसन्नोऽस्तु गुरुः सदा सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखमाप्नुयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय